Hi guys, Clara here, and if you're familiar with my channel, you know I have made a lot of things out of clay. What you may not know is that all this time I've been baking my clay completely wrong. In reality, they are undercooked, brittle, and weak. Maybe you have seen my clay dragon tutorial a while back. This is him now, accidentally knocked off a shelf and shattered. He also lost his head, but I already superglued that back on because otherwise it would be too disturbing. After this, I figured enough was enough and started seriously researching polymer clay, and that is when I discovered how little I knew about clay. This may blow your mind, but apparently you will never burn your clay in the oven as long as it never reaches a certain temperature, usually over 275 degrees Fahrenheit. To test this theory, we need to visit my clay drawer and pick out a few different brands to test. I will also be using this popsicle stick contraption I made so I can roll out the clay evenly. Now let's just read the packages and see the recommended baking instructions that I've been ignoring. Sculpey wants us to never go above 275 degrees Fahrenheit, or 130 degrees Celsius. Fimo Soft recommends to bake at 230 degrees Fahrenheit or 110 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes. Though on the back it does say do not heat over 130 degrees Celsius or 265 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's see how true that is. But not before looking at this no-name brand. Technically not no-name, but the same kit is sold under many names, so I'm still calling it no-name. I found it on Amazon and the instructions say to bake at 275 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 to 30 minutes, depending on thickness. Let's get to opening these packages and conditioning our clay. Now for the Fimo clay, they actually have an easy pull tab on the back of the package, which I didn't learn about until recently, but it makes it easy to open the package and be able to reseal any unused portions afterwards. Finally, we have our oily no-name brand, which left the package slick and difficult to open. When you finally release it from its plastic wrap, you will notice that it seems to come pre-conditioned. Softening up this clay took about 3 or 4 folds. On to rolling out our samples, I'm using this ceramic tile, which I highly recommend if you're working with clay. I have a large one, which you see on my desk, and I attached felt pads to the bottom so I could move it around easily without worrying about scratching the surface of the desk. I also have a medium-sized tile that I use as a heat sink in my oven. It basically helps maintain a constant temperature when you're putting in and removing your clay. Finally, these smallest tiles are really handy for small sculpting and placing multiple sculptures in the oven, making them easy to remove at different times. I got mine at Home Depot, but you can get yours at any home improvement store. Definitely worth the buy. Back to the clay, I'm rolling out a piece of Sculpey and a piece of Fimo. I want one of my test strips to be a 1-to-1 ratio of Sculpey and Fimo to see if that changes the outcome. And that'll get me a pretty accurate 1-to-1 ratio of the two. After rolling up this mixture, I now have the 4 different types of clay I want to test today. Sculpey, Sculpey Fimo, Fimo, and no name. I hope I'm saying that right. Fimo. Fimo. It's Fimo now. And I'm using a rough template I cut out of parchment paper just to make sure that the strips are relatively the same size. Hopefully you can tell the difference between the shades of green. If not, that's okay. I can. Now that I've got my test plate, I need to replicate this 3 more times. Now to keep track of everything, I just made this simple table on a Word document to record my findings. I also added a legend because I'm going to be adding symbols to each strip of clay to represent the time and the temperature that I'll be baking them at. Now the strips on this tile have 2 dots and 1 line, so they will be baked at 275 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. Rinse and repeat for each combination, and now I'll be able to tell after baking which temperature and time was used for each strip. Finally, on to baking. Now remember, I'm using this tile as a heat sink, so I'm placing it in the oven before I preheat it. That way it will slowly absorb heat as the oven rises in temperature, keeping the temperature in the oven constant. I place my tiles in foil baking pans just so it'd be easier to grab them. So I'll put my timer on for 20 minutes, and when that timer's up, I'll take out my 20-minute tile and I'll reset the timer for 40 minutes. When that timer's done, the second tile comes out and they're left to cool completely. For the next batch, I'm preheating to 275 and placing my 2 remaining tiles in the oven. And again, setting the timer for 20 minutes, taking out the 20-minute tile, and adding on another 40 minutes to the timer for the 60-minute tile. And when that timer is done, I can take out my last tile and admire my unburned clay strips. Now, I left mine to cool overnight just because I was tired and I didn't want to look at them anymore. But now that they're all baked and cooled, now we can finally see if baking longer makes a difference in the clay's strength and flexibility. I'm starting off at the lowest temperature for the shortest amount of time and working my way up. So just scraping them off the tile and seeing if they break. And yep, Sculpey breaks. This is the Fimo in Sculpey, and that broke pretty quick too. Fimo is actually pretty strong, but still snaps. And the No Name felt really wiggly and kind of underbaked, so I wasn't surprised when that broke. Sculpey at 60 minutes still breaks. Fimo Sculpey mixture is pretty strong, but of course it snaps. So far the Fimo is winning on this front. It made it the furthest without breaking. And the No Name just feels like paper. Moving on to 275 degrees Fahrenheit. The Sculpey, of course, snaps. The Sculpey Fimo seems like it's pretty strong. I can almost touch, let's see, I can touch the end and it's not breaking. Look at that. Oh, it cracked. But still, that's pretty good. This is the straight Fimo mixture. So bending it completely and see if it can touch ends. Let me readjust. Yep. It's flexible. I never would have thought clay could do that. My clay has always broken straight away. And look at that. I'm bending it the other way. And touching that end. Oh, is that? No, it didn't break. Wow. Folding it again. The other way. Almost completely flat. Look at that. Looks like there's slight tearing. But really, after bending it like 3 times, I'm like honestly super impressed. And here we go. Oily No Name. Actually, some pretty good bend. Wow. This one's really flexible. Oh, see, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. Though it did have a really good reach until I kind of pushed it a little bit too far at the bend. Now, this is moment of truth. This is 275 for 60 minutes. Over double the amount of time that I would ever think to bake clay. And Sculpey, of course, loses. I can see that Sculpey kind of sucks. Now, this is the Sculpey Fimo, and it is pretty strong. I can bend it all the way, ends touching. And let's see if we can bend it the other way. It's a bit stiff, but there's no breaking yet. I'm just going slow because I'm kind of nervous, but there's nothing. There's no breaks, no cracks. Perfect. Moving on to Fimo. Got strong hopes for this one. And yeah, touching ends. Let's see if we can bend it the other way. And this is a thin piece. I didn't think that a 2mm one would work like this. And I can bend it completely the other way. And there's not even any tears on the back. I'm honestly really surprised. Let's see if No Name can compete. So I can bend it once. And I can bend it completely the other way. I've learned my lesson, so I'm not going to push down on the bend this time. But this one actually feels really flexible. I mean, look at it. It can do the wave. Oh, okay, so there is some cracking, but that was after a few bends and a few waves, so I think it held up pretty well considering. So let's see the overall picture of how we did. I've lined up all the test samples again, and you can definitely tell that the higher temperatures of the Sculpey really changed that white color to a beige. Other than that, the other colors seem to look basically the same. Sculpey failed in every single test, but the Sculpey Fimo and the Fimo really did well. No name brand, not bad. Still some cracking at the 275 at 60 minutes, but that was honestly more than I was expecting from it. Now let's compile these results in our table. So what do you take away from this video? Do not be afraid of baking your clay too long. But other than that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next clay video.